So when you're looking at your line drawings, your sketches that you've done that you want to turn into a linocut print, it's important to start looking at those sketches and defining what spaces are going to print and what spaces are not. So you're essentially taking this line drawing and figuring out what are the positive or dark tones and what are the negative spaces, the light tones. So you have positive and negative space, dark and light tones, two tones, and really beautiful two-tone prints have a harmony between these dark and light, positive and negative areas. And so it's important to plan these areas out. Not just plan them out, but do many variations so you can figure out how your line drawing is going to best translate to a print. And you want to get all these major decisions about how the image looks out of the way before you start carving. Because when you start carving, that's what you want to be focusing on. You don't want to be making big compositional decisions in the middle of carving your block. What you want to do is create a variety of images to choose and then pick from the best, right? A variety will give you more data to choose from. You'll be more confident in your decision, and you'll also be honing your skill when it comes to understanding how dark and light shapes work together. So I'm going to do a little demonstration here. And this is a drawing that I pulled out of my sketchbook, right? I have two drawings of flowers here that I did in a garden, and I really like this top one. And this is just a 3" by 4" drawing. If my block is 3 inches by 4 inches, then I can start with this and make copies of it using a copying machine, or I can scan it and print it. Or if I want my print to be a different size, I would scan this, enlarge it to the correct size, and then print it out. So that's what I'm going to do for the purposes of this demo. And here I have some copies I've made. I've scanned this drawing and I've turned it into a 6 by 4, a 6 by 4, 6.4 inch blow up. So this would be like the actual size of my print. So when you are working out these dark and light areas, it is really important that you work them out to scale, right? The actual scale of your print. What I do here, if I start defining dark and light spaces on this small 3x4 print, it's going to look a lot different to me when I blow it up to this size. So it's important to work actual size, and it's also again really important that you make multiple copies so you have again a variety of options that you can make. So I've made multiple copies here, and what you could do is just draw directly onto your copies. So I can take this and start figuring out how I'm going to define these shapes just by drawing directly on the piece, right? I don't have to draw a completely new drawing or trace over it. I can just look at this and start thinking and say, I want these rose petals to read as a solid black. So I'm just going to color these. And I really do encourage you, when you're first approaching this this exercise, to work as simply as you can. Don't get caught up in details. Try to eliminate as many lines as you can. And just don't also randomly color in ideas. You want to have a methodology, right, behind your reasoning for color. It will coloring in some areas, making these areas dark and making some of these areas light. So right now I'm just working on the stems, and maybe I will leave the petals um, full color. As you can see, my Sharpie is starting to dry up here, so it's always a good idea to have multiple Sharpies. So I'm just going to pull this other Sharpie out because I have a whole bunch of them. So I'm just coloring in this area, and down here where I might have two black areas rubbing up against each other, I'm just going to outline like that, where I would want that to be white. This white line here kind of gives the hint of the shape. It kind of continues the shape of this tulip. Or, I could just decide to cover it up. We'll see. Maybe I don't want it there after all. But the point is, again, I am making these decisions, working out what areas are going to be dark, what areas are going to be light before I start carving my block. Because when I print it, it's going to look a lot more like this than a line drawing like this. So this is my first one. And maybe this is a really big area over here. What if I were to color this in? And I would encourage you to actually color in solidly the whole shape, right? Sometimes when I quickly want to indicate that a large shape is a dark tone, I'll just put an X in it like that. But that's not going to work for the purposes of this exercise because I don't really understand. My mind can't read how this dark shape is going to look against this one. So that is why I am filling in, right, this whole area here. Right, and this is just one of the many examples that I am doing. Right, so now, big difference, right? And it begs the question, I've colored in this area, should I color in the rest of the background? Because now this looks like an awkward, we have this really strong dark shape against all this white space and small black shapes over here. The composition is a little imbalanced. So let me try to balance it out a little bit more by coloring in some more of the background and maybe giving some little indications of where the edges of the leaves of the flower might be. So I'm defining this border here. Coloring this in. And then that's a little bit better, right? We have a little bit more balance in this composition now. Right? But there are some areas that still look pretty awkward. This looks awkward up here, right? So it's time to color in, right? Maybe we define this leaf like so. Notice how I'm using a big fat Sharpie for this. I want you to use a Sharpie for this because it'll keep things simple for you, right? Using a big fat Sharpie will keep you away from getting into the details, and you can focus a whole lot more on what's important, and that is defining these shapes, figuring out what areas are dark and what areas are not. So here we have a majority dark composition, and it's not looking too bad. I do kind of like these shadow lines. It's pretty nice. This area looks a little strange, so I might choose to draw the rest of that flower that I maybe didn't get around to, in my sketch to make it feel more like a fleshed out tulip. There we go. And so this would be my first drawing, right? Where I've decided to put dark in the background and bring the focus to these tulips right here. And even after doing this, it's a little hard to understand what this would look completely black and white because I still have my original drawing showing through here. In that case, I can take a blank sheet of paper and lay it over it like so. And now I can redraw, right? You can do this with tracing paper or really thin Western paper, vellum. I am using thin Western paper for this. And so I can just redraw this image while I'm looking at it. Right, and this would be like even simpler, right? Because I don't have all those lines from before. So I'm just doing some simple outlines here. And as I do this, I am deciding to just switch it up a bit, right? I'm just going to start coloring. And I wonder what might... I'm really enjoying the simplicity of these shapes right now, so I'm just going to continue coloring. It is really helpful to do this with ink if you have ink, because as you can see, Sharpies start to dry out after repeated use. You have to give them some time to recharge. But as I do this second image using tracing paper, or this thin Western paper, you can see how there's a lot less information I'm starting out with, and so what I'm getting is a bolder, more graphic image. I'm just going to grab me some more Sharpies. You can never have enough. Just load all the Sharpies. All the Sharpies you have. Bring them next to you. So you can, don't be like me. Don't have to get up in the middle of a drawing session so you can grab more Sharpies. Get all the Sharpies in your house. So as I'm coloring this thing, again, I want you to notice this is going to be much more representative of how your image is going to print because I don't have all those initial lines there from my sketch from when I did the photocopy. All I have is these black shapes that I'm drawing, and I think it looks pretty cool. I really like echoing, just leaving some of these in silhouette. It leaves more up to the imagination, and I think that's really important, right? The less detail you add, the more you give to the viewer to imagine. Right now, especially for the purposes of this exercise, when you're trying to figure out the dark tones and the light tones and how they work together, I don't want you to think about representational lighting. For example, the direction of a lamp that might have on an apple, right? Gradients of shading, or coloring something black just because that object in real life is black, right? I want you to focus solely on how these positive shapes and negative shapes, dark and light tones, relate to each other when you're building a composition. So and again, I know it takes a long time to color everything in, but it's worth it. And the flatter your colors are, for example, like this, just flattening that out so it's black, the better it's going to read. If I was better with scissors, or X-Acto blades, I would be doing this with black and white construction paper because you would get such a solid read. Okay, so here we are. Here's another image, almost done. Again, I like the simplicity of this one. I'm just going to add a few more of these important details that help further define the tulips, the flowers. I think these are tulips. There we go. Okay. So right, much different. All right, now we have two variations, right? This one has some more detail. This one has less detail, and we can compare and contrast, figure out which one we like the best. So I'm just going to set these aside. And do, a final one. What if I just did the entire flower, right? So I'm outlining this flower. And again, this is something you can do with tracing paper, and I highly recommend that, using the tracing paper instead of working directly on top of a copy, because it's going to be, again, a lot more representational of what a relief print's going to look like, because instead of coloring over shapes and there being sketch lines underneath, you're going to actually be drawing out these dark and light areas with your pencil, your Sharpie, and then coloring them in. Notice how I'm not drawing the whole border either, because when I make my print, some areas of the border, unless I, draw the border and carve it out so you can see it, I'm going to have shape. Some of these light shapes are going to, merge with the paper. The paper is going to become part of the shape, and that's an important consideration. Or like the paper, the border around the image is going to become part of the light shapes. And so that is definitely something to consider. So again, this time, coloring in the flowers all the way. To create a nice black silhouette, nice dark silhouette. All right, maybe I'll leave this because I do like those. See, already I really like this. All right, I'm going to do this line here because that clearly defines the border. Well, not yet, but if I have this corner, that will clearly define the border. All right, again, just grab your Sharpies, a whole bunch of them in case one goes. Try to get close to those edges. Like so. You know what? That's too finicky for me. I'm just gonna color over that. Okay, but I do still like having these little lines here. Again, you want to have all of these decisions worked out before you start carving, because when you're carving, that is what you want to focus on. And as you're rebuilding this composition, don't be afraid to change your drawing, add or remove things altogether, or make adjustments. That is an option. Your drawing is, it's a starting point, right? And as you see, it's going to change a lot as you start translating your drawing into a image suitable for relief printmaking. All right, so I'm just going to bring this down. I want this to maybe look more leaf-like, so maybe I'll add another one just playing around here. All right, don't let your drawing, your original drawing constrict you. All right, you can get to a point where you just start adding things on your own, right? I'm building something that's pleasing for this composition. I don't necessarily have to stay loyal to this original drawing. Okay, So I really like this one, but there is a problem. It is very difficult to see some of these borders, right? Right here, the image just kind of like dies off, and you can't really tell where, you know, you can't really tell where this image ends and the border begins on this side, whereas you can clearly see here that that's a corner. You can make out a corner down here. And so we have these implied corners, but we don't have an implied corner over here, so we need a dark shape. So, what I'm going to do to fix that is just choose, let's say, an area right here, and I'm going to add, another shape in there just to show that, yes, there is a dark shape here. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm just going to say I want it to be right here. I want the shape to be this big. I want this shape to kind of lead into this drawing. So maybe it's a leaf. I'm just going to continue here. And then maybe let's fill this in and see how that looks. All right, okay, that's better. I can kind of see this corner here, even though it looks, a little awkward. Let's see. So here, maybe there. All right, another one. Oh, it would be right there. See, I'm already tripping myself up. All right, just continuing that pattern. So that reads a little bit better. So this one, right, and then this one. All these different, variations.